Well, good afternoon, John. John Donovan,
Marty.
Marty Keller here in Sacramento, John Donovan in Oceanside, California. We're the Accountability Practice Boys, and we're here to share some information with those of you who are clued in to our podcast today. The Intentional Living Podcast, we're always looking at the same thing. How do I deal with patterns of behavior that I find myself stuck in, that in my conscious mind I say I don't want, but somehow I feel compelled to engage in them anyway?
Right.
How can I learn to uh, identify and ultimately befriend those compulsions so that I'm now free to create a new world, to create a new set of behaviors, to create a new set of internal experiences that lead to the kind of life that I actually consciously want? So that's what we do here on the Accountability Practice Intentional Living podcast. And we've been talking about this for a long time, and I hope we
hmm
talk about it for a long time to come. So, John, John is the gentleman who developed this practice, and he's been doing this for so many years. I don't know if we can look back that far into the misty beginnings of history, John, but it's uh, it's something that you continually refine with experience, and
hmm
as do I, because life goes on, and we keep learning new things about ourselves as life experiences maybe present new problems, novel problems, new uh, concerns, and we have a practice here that helps us navigate those waters in a completely different way from what we might have uh, used as young men or even little kids. Um, we'd like to talk today, I think, John, about something that in psychology is called triggers. And
hmm
maybe we start by sharing what you think a trigger is, or how you define triggers, so that person who might be listening in for the first time might get a sense of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was in class this morning. I work at a outpatient clinic, and we do a check-in. One of the participants talked about being triggered, and we went on with the check-in. And I thought to speak to that to the whole group because trigger is a word we use to describe what somebody else did to make me. That person walked out of the room or that person didn't listen to me. I was triggered. And triggers a really good analogy because that's the action part of a gun. It's like you pull that trigger and something comes out the barrel, and sometimes you don't want it to go out, and it can be deadly. So I based on the information I have around, I'm going to pull up the board here. Um, how this continuation of a pattern continues, and right here, without a lot of explanation, in the results column is where I've listed um, the patterns of behavior. It's either codependency, addiction, or some type of an avoidant behavior, or avoiding the the connection in the present moment, the avoiding myself and my own pain. Could be screaming and yelling, it could be gambling, it could be shoe shopping.
So
These are the patterns.
hold on one second,
Yeah.
okay? So for the newcomer, when you talk about results, what do you mean results of what?
Results of family of origin, dysfunction, childhood trauma, or like Gabriel Mate calls it, complex post-traumatic stress.
So in other
So
words,
this,
experiences
okay.
that are inevitably going to show up for me as an adult from having some kind of traumatic experience or serious
Right.
patterns of experiences as a little kid before I had any adult capability of responding.
Right. Yeah. We see this in people coming back from combat zone. We know that they have post-traumatic stress because of their actions in the moment. They're either have a difficulty sleeping, have nightmares, startle effect, hear a loud noise, they become hyper vigilant, or they drop to the ground. So this is that list of actions that come from unresolved complex post-traumatic stress. And most of that stress is held 9/10 of our memory, which holds most of our trauma experiences, are in our subconscious, which we don't know what they are. So the only way to know that they're there is to own the action or say the truth about the action I find myself in. And for this purpose, for the purpose of this podcast, um, codependency addiction or some type of avoidant behavior. So the participant said, I want to work on my triggers, or I was in an event the last couple of days where I was triggered. And what they mean is they went into a reaction mode. And the reaction mode is that pattern of behavior I found myself in is actually the survival pattern of fight, flight, freeze, or please, where I'm in a reaction that isn't in alignment with what's really happening in the room or between me and the other person or people. Um, so the guy asked, what do I do about my triggers? Well, actually, this action or reaction, the pattern, and that's what I identified as a pattern of behavior, is instead of talking calmly to somebody, specifically my wife, ex-wife, I would find myself defensive, loud, posturing in a way that was intimidating, or walking out of the room. And that's what we call, I was triggered. So I went into some type of behavior that I say I don't want. Well, what I asked him was, would he be willing to consider that trigger is a reaction response to a trauma that he had? Trigger actually in an awareness of I'm triggered or I'm in a adrenaline state, fight, flight, freeze, please, tells me that there's something in my subconscious based on the current reality that I'm avoiding, that I can stop, take a breath, and know that it's not happening in real time, current reality. That whatever I'm responding to, actually reacting to, is an unresolved childhood trauma. Now, for me, an example of this would be in an argument with my ex-wife, and she says, "Screw you," and walks out the door. I'm leaving. And then I go into a panic. And I used to call that she triggered me. Well, something happened in my childhood where I was in some way, somehow, physically, emotionally, or spiritually left alone, abandoned, left to my own recourse. And a child's recourse is to implode or blame self or see themselves as helpless or a victim, which is absolutely true for the child. The child from ages 1 to 7, maybe one, you could argue that point, how old they have to be before they start participating, 1 to 7 or 1 to 12 years old. They don't have the emotional wherewithal to be proactive for themselves. So they rely on their caretakers, and if their caretakers are wounded, then they're stuck with the trauma. And I have in the form of fish hooks in the subconscious signifying trauma. I only have 3 right here, but that's, if we had to like how many logarithmically, that would be 3 to the 97th power. It's like a
At
lot
least,
in there,
at least.
at least. Okay, and that happens to be how many particles or things are in the universe. So,
Yeah.
um, so the trigger is either another example of me falling back into a pattern, or now that I know, oh, this reaction is coming from my subconscious. Because I mean, as a 45-year-old man, my partner says, "Screw you, I'm leaving," and goes out and gets in her car. I could watch TV. I could write a I'm a sorry note. I can go out and buy flowers. I mean, there's all kinds of things I can do rationally in the moment as a healed human being. But I got associated back into the childhood trauma subconsciously. And my body responded as if that trauma in my childhood was happening now. So I went into a adrenaline state. My energy went up. I was either defensive or I wanted to fight, or I froze. I just couldn't move. Or I went into the please mode. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Not knowing what I'm saying I'm sorry for, not really thinking I want to be sorry. Just to keep them around, I will posture in a, it's all my fault. Okay, I'll be a good boy, which is what the only thing my little child knew to say is, I'll be good, I'll be good, I'll be good. Nice deep breath. So now, if I know that trigger means there's something going on in my subconscious, the trigger activating, I've been activated into a survival mode that isn't in real time. I can simply own that pattern, that reaction. So that reaction, um, she's a no good person. She doesn't care about me. And then take it up here and then own it. The truth is, I don't have the capacity to care about myself. If I don't have the capacity to care about myself, I do not have the capacity to care about her. So my truth is, I don't have the capacity. I don't care. I don't care about myself. Take a breath. That emotion happens. I don't have to name the feeling. So, and sometimes naming the feeling takes away from the moment of realization. In that moment, something happens internally with my body. What I believe happens is that truth validates that little boy. Yes, that hurt. Yes, you were afraid. Yes, you didn't know what to do. Yes, you would do everything in your power to get your mother to come back, your dad to come back. Yes, I see that you're frustrated and I see you're scared. Non-verbally. And yet I've learned to put those words to that feeling tone. And in that awareness that I was motivated by an unhealed trauma, telling the truth actually validates the trauma somehow, some way. Maybe we'll do a whole half hour on what that validation means. And then in that state of awareness, create an intent. What is it I want? Oh, I intend to hold myself in high regard. Oh, I just learned a new one. One of my clients said this, and I'm going to take it. I intend to self-soothe. Oh, I could do, I intend to self-soothe. I intend to be there for myself. I intend to notice my own fear. I intend to breathe when I feel scared. I intend to soothe myself. I take a deep breath. And that action healed something in my subconscious. If I had an eraser, I'd erase the tips of these hooks. Something shifted. And if this doesn't know time, it's here now in that statement of truth and my own self-acceptance and my attending. I intend to hold myself in high regard, is attending to myself. That means that was released. See, I didn't have an adult when I was 3 years old scared to death, crying at night, afraid of whatever it was, to come in and say, "You're okay. I'm here. I will help you. I see that you're afraid. I see that you're scared." So that I could experience that scared and know that I wasn't going to die, know that I could express it, which I'm doing in the present moment, which is healing. That's self-validation. That's intentionally responding to my reaction instead of judging, blaming, self-deprecating, blaming her. If she didn't do that, I wouldn't feel this way. And in that self-awareness, attending to myself. I know this may be confusing, but it brings me back to the five constants of relationship, which means pay attention. Pay attention to what? My body sensations. Are these body sensations part of that reaction pattern that I want to get away from? Okay, yes, I'm in a react. Oh, I'm scared. I'm terrified. I'm judging. Whatever the truth may be, that the behavior, the unresolved trauma creates in the real time. Take it to the tree. And now I start noticing things different. I can, having done this, and then having been in arguments with people who are close to me, intimate relationships, I find myself going, oh, what is my part in this argument? How am I co-creating this angst? And if I am, choose to do something different. If I'm not, allow the other person their space to process theirs. Not leave, not judge, not tell them, threaten, if you don't do this, I won't. No, it's different. So I'm gonna tell you what I just told you. I can use the term trigger or the event of the trigger to notice that I'm in a reaction response, which comes from my subconscious unresolved trauma. Simply own it. Judgmental, whatever the action is that I normally go to. My action was screaming, yelling, accusations, threatening, ultimatums. Boy, I was full of ultimatums. If you don't, I will. I'll never. If you do that again, I'll leave. Ultimatums. And I can just sit in that discomfort, say the truth, and then say what I want to change that pattern to. The pattern of not able to attend to myself, not able to regulate my own emotional body. I intend to hold myself in high regard. I intend to love myself in this place of not being able to regulate myself. In spite of the fact I can't regulate right now, I will still accept myself just the way I am. Nice deep breath. Oh, this is different. And what I found is the more I own these patterns, knowing where they came from, not to own them to blame myself or to self-criticize or self-deprecate, to know that the pattern comes from unresolved trauma, the trigger now becomes an opportunity for me to self-examine and self-heal through this process of accountability, blame-free, judgment-free. Simply say this pattern. I'm mean. I'm screaming and yelling. I'm judging. I'm objectifying her, whatever it may be. Take a deep breath. I intend to be kind. I intend to be gracious. I intend to heal. And I find myself different. From the first time I did this, which was actually 26 years ago, 1998, I went into my own violence intervention class. And that was when I was first introduced to the concept of accountability. It wasn't in this form. I didn't have all this material put together. The guy that was facilitating the group that I went to simply said, the way out is stop the denial, blame, minimizing collusion. And then he said, just be accountable for your behavior. And it, like, oh my God. Something happened when he said that I got, whatever he just said is my relief. I'm staying. I want to figure out what that guy just said, because I felt it in my body that there was hope. There was like just a smidgen of hope that I could change, because I was so, what do you call it when you're resigned? Resigned to life being the way it be. Resigned, this is the way I am. Oh my God, no hope, no help. I'm hopeless. I'm powerless. To a place where I was like, I didn't have the words over a period of 26 years. Um, this process has come out to where I could write it down the best way I can so I can share that experience with other people. Um, and I've been writing this particular thing on my whiteboard, used to be blackboard, for 25 years. And until I figure it all out myself, I'll keep putting it up. There's just a wealth of information there, a wealth of things, topics that can come up about what this process actually is, and then how to maneuver from where I'm at to a place I want to be. And I have changed the patterns of behavior. I want to give an example, and I think a really significant example. I was driving on a 2-lane road going to the freeway, two lanes in each direction. I came to an intersection that had turn lanes in it. And as I was coming up to the intersection, I saw a guy coming from the right pulling onto my flow of traffic. And there's 2 lanes, so I figured he'd pull into his lane. Well, he didn't see me. And by the time I got into the intersection, he was coming into my lane. Now, we got this particular activating system survival mechanism. I don't know what happened, but I probably hit the wheel just a touch, moved to the left. He probably hit the wheel just a little bit, moved to the right, and we didn't hit. And I pulled up in front of him. I was driving. I kept driving. And Marty, when I looked in the rearview mirror, my first thought was, I hope they are okay. And when I heard myself think that and look, I thought, shit, this works. This this works. Because before that, I would have been self-righteous and, oh, that guy didn't know what he's doing. He tried to kill me. Doesn't he know he's a stupid? I went into the blame and judgment and probably pulled him over. I don't know. This works. That's when I saw myself in that response to a deadly situation that was life-threatening. Okay, this works. It
and that
changed the pattern of. Go ahead.
and that generated a triggering response, adrenaline squirt,
Yes, yes.
like boom.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there wasn't
Yep.
time for you to think about how you're going to respond. This response now
Right, right.
was as automatic as the up yours might have been before.
Well, see, yes. And my life as a child depended on my caregivers. So if they left the room, I was going to die. I had no, so my body responded with adrenaline. In the truth of where I was, yes, I was going to die. So that got held in people leaving the room, I'm going to die. Well, no wonder I found myself screaming and yelling or blaming or posturing in a threatening way or having ultimatums, because in my subconscious, this mechanism believed, it's the obstacles, belief, perception, that I was going to die. And it happened so quick, just like the movement of the wheel. I don't remember what I did, but I did. We did something. He did something. I did something. Otherwise, we'd have crashed. That reaction response happened so quickly, and I find myself, like I said, in a reaction mode pattern, screaming, yelling before I realize what happened, before my cognitive mind can catch up. And it's necessary in the accident scenario. If that wasn't the capacity of the human being to react even before it happens, then we wouldn't have maintained the line of life from amoeba to where we're at now, and however many thousand millions of years, this reticular activating system, this response reactive mode, is vital to our survival. And it's not that we want to throw that away. We don't want to never be not reactive. Reactive when it's necessary, when it is a life or death situation. But burnt toast is not a life or death situation. My ex-wife leaving the house is not a life or death situation, and yet I'm responding to it. And being able to make that connection relieves me of the burden of blame, self-criticism. Of of course my little kid's scared. Of course he's terrified. This tells you how terrified or how drastic I don't know if drastic's the right word, the amount of trauma that I'm holding in my subconscious that I don't know what it is. And I'm gonna say this again: the only way to know what's in there, just like a guy coming back from a war zone, he hears a loud noise, he drops to the ground. You know that that's in there. Ah. So if somebody walks out of the room and I go into fight, flight, freeze mode, this had to happen. Something had to happen to get that reaction response. So
Uh,
maybe we're going
this
to
is really
talk
good.
more about it next
Well,
thing.
this
I
is
don't
really good
know.
stuff. We have a couple minutes left, so I wanted to couple of points. Maybe we can get to one of them. But it's the point that we were just alluding to, which is that this this immediate response to what we appears to us to be a crisis,
Yes.
whether it's an actual crisis or it's a remembered crisis that comes from a trauma that has not been healed, therefore is always subject to this possible trigger, is
Yes.
normal, natural,
Yeah.
built in.
Yeah.
Everyone has this. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong. This is utterly part of our human mechanism, this body that, as you were alluding to, has been developed by evolution over millions and millions of years to this level of complexity and the amazing ability for us to have somebody uh, enter our lane of traffic and without thinking about it avoid an accident.
Right.
That this
Yeah.
that and so the point I want to emphasize to the newcomer here is that triggers are part of the deal, and as you were saying, part of the human deal. Let's just make that more explicit. As you were saying, as we do this practice, we can begin to use those triggers to learn about where they're coming from, so that if they're coming from an unhealed trauma, we can work on the healing, and that
Yes.
and that trigger can point to where in our spirit or our soul or our subconscious that unhealed energy lies.
Right.
And so, my friends, when John brought us over to the right hand side of the board to the accountability tree, that's where we do the work. So, when you said to learn to own it, what that basically means, in my understanding, is to be able to say, yes, that's me.
Yeah.
I am having this experience, or I have this belief that has generated this response.
And
So,
I think a key thing here is own the reaction or the behavior.
right,
Okay.
right,
Which isn't me. It's how I've learned to respond.
right,
Okay. So when I own the behavior, I separate myself, John Donovan, I am from the behavior, and know that if I chose that, even though it was instantaneous, based on the best I could do with that subconscious, I could choose something else. I and the
right,
behavior changes. Okay.
right. So as we wrap it up here, I think the essential point, my takeaway is that I can't avoid triggers; they're part of life. But when I respond to a situation that's all out of proportion with what's actually going on, there's information for me to learn about my unhealed trauma.
Right.
And as I stick with that, um, experience, and I take it to the accountability tree to go into the feeling state. How do I feel? Um, as I've shared on the podcast many times, I have this instantaneous trigger that if I do something clumsy, I immediately get enraged. There's not even a nanosecond. There's not even a nanosecond time between the
Right.
stubbing of my toe and the flaring up of the rage. Okay.
Right.
So I've just
Mm-hmm.
learned that that's a gift to me. It's like, okay, I give myself permission to be enraged and sit with it as best I can, take a deep breath and say, what do I want?
Right.
Two things happen at the same time when I do that. Number one, I'm validating. That's the word that you used earlier. I'm validating, I'm honoring, I'm acknowledging a little kid who developed this reaction for whatever reason as a way of staying safe. It's a defense
Yeah.
mechanism, as you said.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm validating him, I'm honoring him. In essence, metaphorically, I'm holding him in my arms and saying, you're okay.
Yes.
And then simultaneously, at the same time, I'm liberating both of us, the inner kid and the adult, from the compulsion that that trigger created by saying what I want instead and creating a
Right.
brand new intention.
Right.
So, so that's our presentation today on triggers. And as always, I want to thank you, John, for the insights and for sharing your wisdom with us. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to doing it again.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Sounds good.
Oh, by the way,
Thank you, Marty.
if you'd like to participate in this work, it's best done in meetings where we actually do the tree. We work the accountability tree in with real specific things that are going on. As John shared, somebody did that with him this morning in one of his meetings. So, how to join our meetings will be at the end of the podcast. They're all on Zoom, and you can check us out. And we'd love to have you when you come to check us out. You can participate, or you can say nothing and just watch.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have rules about that. We welcome you whatever way you'd like to participate. So stay tuned for that information, and we welcome you to the meetings. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Marty.
See you at the next one.
Appreciate you.
We
Okay.
appreciate you.